I'm Dave Breakenridge, and this is Under the Dome. When it comes to the relationship between the city and the province, there's a lot at play. There's funding agreements, there's infrastructure, there's housing and homelessness, not to mention mask mandates. Today, in a special sit-down with Edmonton Mayor Amarjeet Sohi, we address some of these issues and more. My guest today is Edmonton Mayor Amarjeet Sohi. Mr. Mayor, thanks very much for joining me.
Well, thank you so much for having me once again, Dave. Happy to join
No
you back.
worries. Yeah. Now, it's been a busy week at the intersection of provincial politics and municipal politics. I wanted to get your thoughts on some of what's been going on this week. And I think the first thing I wanted to touch on is Premier Kenney appeared at the Alberta Municipalities, kind of big meeting or forum or whatever you want to call it. And he was talking about... First, he was talking about funding for EMS, but one of the big messages that was coming out of his speech was the idea that, despite the fact Alberta seems to be awash in money right now, we seem to be doing a little better fiscally speaking because of the rise in oil prices, that municipalities should be a little cautious before they come to the province hat in hand asking for more money for projects. And I'm just curious, I know that before the budget, you had a wish list of things that you wanted to see in the budget, and I know that you didn't necessarily get all that you were hoping for out of the provincial budget, and we can talk about that in a bit. But I guess, what was your take on Mr. Kenney's speech to Alberta municipalities leaders?
First of all, I think we should always be prudent with the resources that we have. So, and we need to use them as effectively as possible to achieve the outcomes that we want to achieve for our communities, which is building the capacity of people to be successful. I think we need to recognize that there are a number of needs in communities. I don't like using the word wish list, right? But it's not really a wish. It is what we need out there. For example, the crisis that we're facing in houselessness. It is not a wish list. It's a real need where people are being hurt. Our economy is being held back. People don't feel safe downtown, and we are seeing disorder that is impacting our businesses. And another is opiate crisis. Opiate crisis is not a wish list. It is a real need out there. We see 2 Edmontonians die every day in Edmonton streets because of the poisoning that they are taking because of the addictions and the mental health challenges they're facing. Right. So I think we need to think about when we budget that we should be budgeting on the priorities of communities and allocating resources based on that. And that is where I differ with the premier that saving for the future absolutely important, but saving at whose cost, right? I think that cost is real today, and that cost is human suffering. That cost is holding our economy back. That cost is not investing today to build people's capacity, the human capital that is so necessary for the future economic and social growth of our city, right? So I think that's the approach we would like to take with them when we engage with province.
I do get what you're saying when it comes to the idea that we're talking about needs that need to be addressed. At the same time, the province has stated, we're going to have a relatively conservative estimate for oil prices this year because we can't necessarily, budget at $90 a barrel because we don't know if it's going to stay as high as it is right now or higher than that. Do you feel like you're getting all that you need from the province based on where the projections are at right now? Do you feel that perhaps maybe the government posting a $500 million surplus was maybe a little too high, or do you think that goal is prudent and within that the premier is kind of working within those fiscal constraints that he has in place, and maybe at the end of the year, if the surplus is a little bigger, there may be more money to go around?
Yeah. So I was disappointed in the budget. I made my disappointment pretty known because we asked for bare minimum for asks, and only one was supported, and that was very phenomenal amount of money. Um, but I think we also need to understand, Dave, that for the long term financial sustainability of our province and our cities, which Premier was talking about, and I agree with him on that, requires us to look at what are the cost drivers right, today.
Hmm.
One of the biggest cost driver for healthcare, for justice system, for police services is the housing crisis, is the opiate crisis. It is cheaper to house people and provide them wrapped around services today than is actually to manage the houselessness. Right? So it's almost double. You can eliminate your immediate cost pressures by investing in supportive housing, by investing in wrapped around services today and save money for the long run. So I think if you're looking at the overall financial sustainability, poverty also cost a lot of money to manage, right? Because people, when they're not properly, their human capital is not developed. They live in poverty, and they draw so many resources from services. But if you can invest in people's capacity to look after themselves, then you save money in the long run. So I think it's not just financial savings that you need to tuck away into a heritage fund that will give you financial sustainability. Yes, that is important, but the true financial sustainability of your community will come when people rely less on social programs, when they rely less on healthcare, when they rely less on policing. Right. So I think that is where we need to think, we need to shift our thinking in investing in people so they become independent, they become productive, and they become less reliant on social networks.
Yeah, and I know that obviously you've made public statements since the budget about what items that you were hoping to see in the budget that weren't there, and even at Thursday after the premier's speech at Alberta Municipalities, you suggested that while some funding for healthcare is good, there are housing issues, as you've mentioned here in this conversation. Have you had a chance to talk to the premier since the budget was announced and address these concerns? And if so, what was the premier's response, and how does that relationship work going forward, if you appear to be at some distance apart on some of these key issues?
Yeah. So I have an amicable relationship with the premier. When we see each other, we always show mutual respect for each other. So I saw him on Thursday. Didn't have the chance to talk about our Edmonton needs because he was there to give a speech and he was getting ready
Mhm.
to give that speech. But we sat aside with each other and we had a brief chat and we agreed to connect back. And so I'll be reaching out to his office to set up a meeting as quickly as possible. But we are in discussions with other ministers. Minister Sani, Rajan Sani, who is the transportation minister, we are having conversations with her about tapping into the federal support for funding the transit operational shortfall for Edmonton and Calgary. So those discussions are going really well. She is really championing that we don't leave any federal money on the table because we want to bring back every dollar from Ottawa into our communities, and in touch with Minister McIver, and Mr. Schweitzer has been pretty open to working with it and other ministers as well, right? So our conversations will continue because we need to work together. That's how I look at it. We may disagree from time to time on issues, on approaches, and how fast the support is being provided or not. But at the end of the day, Edmontonians expect me to continue to strengthen my relationship with provincial government and the federal government as well, right? And try to advocate on their behalf, and that's exactly what I'm doing. And all the issues that I talked about, the housing is not a municipal responsibility.
Yeah.
Ending houselessness and ending opiate crisis and mental health crisis are not municipal responsibilities. These are provincial responsibilities. So we need to remind the province that if you're investing in healthcare, absolutely, we like that, we appreciate that, but also invest in areas that you have not invested in yet or haven't done enough of, that are actually hurting our people and hurting our economic growth and hurting the revitalization and coming out of COVID.
Now, one of the other items that I know that you were hoping to see in the provincial budget that wasn't addressed, and it may not seem as important as addressing homelessness and the addictions issues, but there was the notion that Edmonton could potentially play host to games in the 2026 FIFA World Cup. I know that we need to kind of get to a certain point before decisions are made around what Canadian cities are host cities to some of these games. This would be a huge benefit to Edmonton's economy, would bring a whole lot of people into town. Do you have any concerns that Edmonton could fall off the radar as far as being a host city without that provincial commitment? And has there been any movement on that since the budget?
So our conversations are going, right? We are engaged with province, our administration, and other external agencies like Explore Edmonton are engaging with the province on this. We're hopeful because we have a very strong economic case. Hosting FIFA will generate close to $900 million of economic activity in the Edmonton region, not just Edmonton alone, in Edmonton region. But it will also provide us the opportunity to, it's a global platform that you will have to
Mm-hmm.
showcase your city, to showcase your province. And we can do so many things leading up to FIFA 2026 if we get to host the games. Bringing in people, talk about our hydrogen potential, for example, bringing people to talk about our artificial intelligence potential, talking about the work we're doing in energy transition and the work we can potentially do in lithium to electrify the world, because that's exactly what is needed, and the potential in geothermal, and really portray our province as a forward thinking, forward looking province that is taking on so much good work that we are doing in this province. We are leading in innovation in many, many areas. I think that global platform provides us the opportunity to tell the world what is happening in Edmonton region, what is happening in Alberta, and why people should be coming to live here, to invest here, build their lives here, and start their business here. I think it's a huge opportunity for us. Not only we don't have to wait till 2026, we can start using this global platform to highlight what we have to offer.
Now, I wanted to move on to probably what a lot of people were really focused on in Edmonton this week, and this was the notion of the will they or won't they eliminate the city's masking bylaw. The province announced that as of March 1st, its provincial masking mandate was mostly lifted except for high-risk locations, and Calgary followed suit pretty quickly, saying that they were going to get rid of their masking bylaw. And here in Edmonton, we had to wait a few days. We had to wait for a special council meeting, and there was a lot of debate. A lot of speculation over whether people would keep. The council would vote to keep the mask bylaw or get rid of it. And thrown into the mix was the idea that Premier Kenney had floated that, well, if cities won't do away with these rules, we may have to bring in a legislative hammer and do it ourselves. And so just as council was set to debate the getting rid of the mask bylaw or keeping it, Minister McIver introduced Bill 4, which I was kind of surprised at how narrow it was, but it basically said that municipalities can't bring in their own masking rules to deal with COVID-19 or their own vaccine passports to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 without the permission of the minister. And first of all, I know you can't speak for all 13 members of council. You can speak for yourself, but do you get a sense that had this legislation not come in, that Edmonton may still have a mask mandate?
So I think it's very important for the listeners to understand the context behind it, right? And the background behind it. Uh, we all know that province encouraged and expected municipalities to bring their own mask bylaws when province felt that they should be based on local realities and local needs. So Edmonton brought in its own bylaw, at the insistence of the province. And we recently updated that bylaw in November. When we updated that, we put in two triggers that will cause a review. One of them was when province removes its own mask bylaw. The second
Hmm.
trigger was when numbers of cases go down below 100 for 100,000 population for 28 days. So that did not trigger that criteria, right?
Hmm.
So there's a process in place that council must follow in order to review the existing bylaw. And that process is that we call a meeting and council debate it, and then council would have to decide to do so. So we were following the process that is prescribed in the Municipal Government Act. And that's
Yeah.
why we set up this meeting on March 8th, to repeal or not repeal on our own without having a hammer hanging over our head from the province on in Bill 4, right? I think that's what it's called, right? Uh, uh, so I so that is the background, right? It's not that we were not going to debate it; we were set to debate it.
Yeah.
Uh, so I I felt that, and I still feel, and nervous about it, that we are still moving too fast, too quick on moving restrictions. Other provinces are looking into end of March or April for lifting mask bylaws. Having kept them for maybe another couple of weeks or a month would have been probably more prudent approach. But here we are, right? Province was going
Hmm.
to repeal the mask bylaw anyways, because that's what the legislation stated. So we made a decision, and I made my decision based on that. It would not be in existence anyways, even if we wanted to continue with it, right? So, but that's the decision made. I want to move forward. I want to, look for opportunities how we can continue to support Edmontonians during these difficult times and work with province to look for better ways to provide their support.
And what ways could Edmonton look to uh, legislate or put in a bylaw to bring in other protections? I know that there was talk at the meeting on March 8th about the possibility of a new bylaw that reflected city-owned facilities and public transit. I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on what the city needs to do as we move to a sense of normalcy, as a lot of places, BC, other provinces are lifting restrictions, mask mandates, vaccine passports.
Yeah.
So there seems to be a broad social movement to remove restrictions,
Yeah.
but at the same time, there is still a desire on the part of governments to offer some protection. So I'm just wondering what role you figure the city of Edmonton plays, and what areas can council exert its influence over
Yeah.
specific areas.
So there's a number of ways that we can continue to protect Edmontonians that doesn't require bylaw or bylaw changes. One is making sure that we are properly maintaining and cleaning our facilities. We enhanced our cleaning process. We clean them often, for example, rec centers. There are very
Hmm.
robust procedures and protocols to be followed that our administration, our staff follows now to properly clean and kept them tidy rec centers. We are have a we have put more resources to keep our buses clean and our LRT stations clean, and having more sanitization materials are available in those facilities. I think we need to continue to do that, and better filtering system, for example, right? That's something we're looking at. One area that I think council might have to explore is on public transit. For example, the province still requires people to wear a mask on public transit. But with the repealing of our own bylaw, our police officers no longer have the authority to enforce the provincial regulation. Right? So we're looking at ways how we give our police officers that ability. So that might require some changes or introduction of a very focused bylaw changes to give that authority on public transit, right? So, but there's other ways we can do it. Continue to encourage people. We are very open and have done in the past to make a community space available for community clinics to encourage more vaccination. We are partnering and have partnered in the past with the cultural communities to increase education about the benefits of vaccination. So we will continue to do that and to continue to do that education part. Continue to encourage people to voluntarily wear their mask bylaw if they feel comfortable, and continue to wash your hands and all the precautionary things that we have taken, and just reminding people. But there's tangible things that city has done and will continue to do.
That's it for another episode of Under the Dome. Don't forget you can find all past episodes at edmontonjournal.com/underthedome, or you can hit that subscribe button on YouTube. I'm Dave Breakenridge. We'll see you next time.